Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is 3 Buck Theater, and this video is one that I've been giving a fair amount of thought about, and I've also watched a lot of other people's coverage of it, and I kind of wanted to chime in my own 2 cents. But when it comes to the aftermath following Avengers Endgame, there's lots of questions. There are an innumerable amount of questions. And one of the biggest ones I've seen a lot of people talk about is whether or not certain people are going to come back. Now, here's the thing. There's going to be lots of spoilers. You've been warned. But at this point, with $1.2 billion worldwide and a $350 million domestic haul, you've probably seen the damn movie. But that's why you're here in the first place. Anyway, let's talk about Captain America and his return to the MCU now that old man Cap is a thing. If you want my honest opinion on this one, he's probably not going to return in any significant fashion, if at all. I would argue that after all of these years, Chris Evans is done. He wants to be a director. He wants to move on to other projects. He's still in his prime. He still has the ability to do so. Grace Randolph thinks that he'll return because, well, his movies outside of the MCU don't do so well, and she has a point. But at the same time, he's made enough money to where he can take a break for a while and go on to do other more independent projects or direct his own films, which he already did during one of the breaks between some of the movies. So I would argue that in regards to, let's say, Chris Evans, he's probably out of the game. He passed on the shield to Sam. That's what he wanted. That's a good fitting end. And I don't think we're going to get a trilogy of films set in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s that are going to follow Cap's exploits while living in an alternative timeline. I really actually hope that that is not the case, because that would just, I think, ruin everything we saw up to the point in Endgame. I really do. I really think he'd be done. Now, in the case of Iron Man, there's been some interesting thoughts about that as well. And I'm going to go back to what Grace Randolph said. Well, Grace Randolph had made the comment about how it's possible that Tony Stark will return as an AI or as a hologram, and that he could operate his Iron Man suits remotely or independently, as we saw him do in Iron Man 3, and as well as Spider-Man Homecoming, which I think is a very interesting point. Robert Downey Jr. definitely has an ego. I'm not attacking that. And the MCU quite literally saved his life. It's one of the reasons why he has such a large following in regards to playing this character. Those of us who've followed Robert Downey Jr.'s career over the decades knows exactly the kind of problems he got himself into leading up to getting the role of Iron Man. In fact, it was a big thing. I mean, he's got Mel Gibson to thank for helping him out, getting back on his feet. And as a result, we get to see him get a fitting end for these last 11 years. But Downey Jr., kind of like Chris Evans, hasn't had a lot of box office draw outside of these films in recent years. I mean, hell, the last time we saw him in a Sherlock Holmes movie was 2011, winter 2011. And they keep saying they're going to do Sherlock Holmes 3, but it's going to be like 10 years after the fact, which is one of those things where it's like, okay, hurry up and get on with it. We'd like to see this series concluded as well. But he was supposed to go do the Dr. Dolittle movie, and that's currently kind of up in the air. I mean, Downey Jr.'s got some serious clout, but does he have it outside of being in a Marvel Cinematic Universe film? Who knows? We're going to have to wait and see if that's actually the case. Like I said, she makes a good point, but at the same time, my argument is, I think he'll come back, but probably in an entirely different fashion. Now, Armin from Comic Book Cast did make a point about this, and he said that we could see Iron Man return, just not Tony. Right, that as the series progresses, as little Morgan Stark grows up, will she be as quick-witted, as smart, intelligent as her father? Yes, obviously. The answer to that is she's going to be the combination of Pepper and Tony without the nihilism, and I think that's going to be very good. At least Tony when we first met him in that particular aspect. So I think that's going to be something we're going to get Iron Man down the road. Maybe Rescue will teach her how to become Iron Man. There's also the AI of Friday who could help guide her, as well as whatever else comes down the pipeline. So it's very much going to be a situation of everything. Now, this is where I want to get into my theory. I think the return of Tony Stark has been predicted. I think the return of Tony Stark was predicted all the way back in 2012. Now, in 2012 Avengers, when we first get to see Tony hanging out with Pepper in Avengers Tower, well, this little scene takes place, and I want you guys to check it out here.
Sir, the telephone. I'm afraid my protocols are being overridden.
Mr. Stark, we need to talk. You have reached the life model decoy of Tony Stark. Please leave a message.
This is urgent.
Then leave it urgent.
You catch that little line there? Life model decoy. That's a little throwaway line, probably nothing there really to think about or ever to kind of concern ourselves with. However, coming over here to the Marvel Cinematic Universe Wikia, life model decoy is an actual thing, saying here that LMDs were androids designed to replicate every feature of a living person. They were originally designed by S.H.I.E.L.D. to be distractions and real life-saving substitutes for their agents. And LMDs have actually played a fair part in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. up into the season, and that could be a way for Tony Stark to return. Imagine if Tony Stark uploaded his AI into a system, which he probably did, or he uploaded his consciousness to the cloud somewhere, to somewhere in the system, because you know he probably did. In fact, the likelihood of him uploading his consciousness into the system and that hologram we saw at the end of Endgame when he was saying goodbyes to his family and his daughter, that might have actually been him and the AI doing that for the time being in order to make everyone think that he was actually gone. But Tony is always thinking of a contingency. He's always thinking of a way to stick around. And he knew that there was going to be dangers here. Like he said in the movie, let's reverse what was done, but let's not lose what we have. And that obviously was, tying in with Morgan Stark. So LMDs could be a factor. LMDs could play a large part in what's going to happen next with this character, and it's entirely possible that that's where we're going to see things go. Anyway, look, that was just my theory on this one. I could be wrong. In fact, he could entirely be gone completely, which would be okay with me given everything that's happened. But if they do bring him back, this is probably the most likely way they're going to do it in a physical sense. And to me, that's interesting. That's if Kevin Feige wants to go that way. And I think the only way this would happen would be if the cinematic universe it has kind of hit its peak and then from now starts to drop off and ultimately never, it just after a couple years, it starts to just die and die and die and die. And they need to do something to re-inject that original nostalgia back into it. And I think that it would be this. Now, granted, the likelihood of that happening is very minimal, considering the recent acquisition of all the Fox characters, which are now going to then open up the universe to unforeseen possibilities that are going to bring in bucket loads of cash for decades to come. But again, anything could potentially happen, and I'm going to talk about that in another video too about MCU burnout, and we'll get to that. But anyway, your thoughts, your opinions, let me know down in the comments below. I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a fantastic day, and peace out.